for being here. This is Strategies for Starting a Meat Business, what to think about from the beginning. We're so excited to have you and have our wonderful panelists. This is the last in a series called Meat Business Fundamentals that the Quivira Coalition has been putting on with Olivia Tincani. My name is Taylor Mulia. I work for the Quivira Coalition, and I work at the New Agrarian Program here in Colorado. So for folks that haven't heard of the Quivira Coalition, we are a nonprofit based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and through education, innovation, and collaboration, we work with farmers and ranchers. Sorry. I'm gonna move my screen here. We work with farmers, ranchers, government agencies, and land stewards to foster resilience on working lands. And the program that I work for, which is this series is particularly designed for, is for beginning farmers and ranchers. We run an apprenticeship, an 8-month apprenticeship on working farms and ranches all over the West. So if you're interested in finding out more information, you can go to quiviracoalition.org or feel free to message me as well. So we'd love feedback. I will drop a feedback form link in the chat a couple times here. My suggestion is just to open that up and keep it in your browser. And once this webinar is done, maybe later today or tomorrow, we would love for you to fill out a feedback form. It takes about 4 minutes. And we actually do use that information to make these webinars better. And we use it to get funding to continue making these free webinars for folks. So please take a moment to do that. And we also have the 2 other webinars in this series posted on YouTube. So if you did miss the previous 2 ones, they're available to you for free as well. Okay, just a couple Zoom basics. I think we're all pretty up to date on this already, but if you're on the phone, you can use *6 to mute and unmute. Please keep your camera on if possible. It's really helpful for these speakers to see actual faces, but we understand if you've got to jump off. And then feel free to jump on the chat right now. We'd love to know who you are, maybe what you do, what you're interested in learning today. And also if Zoom gave you kind of a funky name when you logged in, see this person's is Quivira Coalition, you can hit these 3 dots right here and rename yourself to your name. And if you wouldn't mind including your preferred pronouns as well. So just a little bit of Zoom etiquette. Keep yourself on mute, please, during the large group presentations, but there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Be aware that everyone can see your comments. If you wouldn't say it to someone in person, please don't say it in the chat. And if you have an issue of any kind, just message me privately and I'll try to take care of it. And last one, please take care of yourself. This is a 2-hour webinar. It's going to be an awesome conversation with a bunch of different voices, but we understand if you need to get up, walk around, get some water, stretch, feel free to do that because there will not be an official break. So yeah. And as always, Quivira likes to kick off our events with a land acknowledgement. So the land where I live, present-day Lyons, Colorado, is the ancestral homeland of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and Sioux, or Oceti-Sakowin peoples. We recognize Indigenous peoples as the original and long-standing stewards of this land. Their extensive knowledge and practice of agriculture and land management established the foundation of land stewardship here. We recognize that the land and this knowledge was forcibly taken and appropriated from Indigenous peoples. As fellow stewards, we honor and respect the land and peoples who have cared for it since time immemorial, and we commit to continue building partnerships with Indigenous peoples and organizations. If you have a land acknowledgement, feel free to drop it in the chat. I can also include a link or to find more information to make a land acknowledgement. So with that, I will pass it off to Olivia. Thanks for joining us. Thanks,
Taylor. Thanks everyone for being here. It's great to see everyone and see all of your faces. So my name is Olivia, and I'm super honored to have been the gatherer and guide for these 3 webinars, and we'll be doing some other ones in the fall and in future years. So I look forward to a continued relationship with Quivira and all the folks that are here as speakers today. So for those of you who I don't know or have never seen, I'm an independent farm business educator, and my background is in farming as well as food service operations that slowly evolved into consulting and that evolved into curriculum design and development and farmer training program creation like this one. So my passion is really for bringing light to the back end of business, to farmers and ranchers, and helping them realize the beauty that happens off the field. And I think Taylor did all of our housekeeping, but I just wanted to encourage you all to drop any comments or questions that you have in the chat as we get going. I find that these things are a little bit less tedious if you kind of holler out what you're thinking, and that inspires other people to do the same. And we'll have around 20 minutes at the end for questions. And if you feel like you're going to forget yours, go ahead and throw it in there, and we'll also come back to it at the end of our conversation. So with that, I am going to let each of our speakers actually introduce themselves. I'm not a fan of reading off other people's bios. I like them to bring their own voice to their introductions. So we're going to get started here. We've got 4 active meat business owner and producer folks here today. And so we have Micha, Dede, Katie, and Meagan. And why don't we just go in that order? And if you each can tell us who you are, where you are, what you raise, how many head or volume that you roughly do each year, so people get an idea of the scope of your operation, a little bit about where you sell to, and a tidbit, a short 2 minutes of your farming origin story. I don't even remember the order that I said, but let's go with Micha because you're next to me in the little box.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Micha Ide. This is my dog, Rue. And my husband and I have a farm in Ording, Washington, which is in Western Washington. The closest city to us is Tacoma. We're about a little over an hour southeast of Seattle. And we have 30 acres of pasture, and we do diversified livestock, pasture rotation based. We do a lot of poultry, well, a lot for me. So 2,000 broiler chickens and 400 turkeys a year. A handful of pork that we used to do on pasture, but have been deep bedding more recently. I think I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then a small amount of beef. And we do a variety of different methods for harvesting all of those different creatures. And my husband and I sort of fell into farming about a decade ago. We thought we'd sort of try it out as interns, and that quickly turned into managing a vegetable CSA without any experience. I don't recommend that route. Taking these kinds of courses is a really good idea before you jump off the deep end. And then we purchased our own farm in 2017. And so we've been sort of riding that line ever since. Don't really know how to get off. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Micha. Dede, why don't you go next?
Hey, y'all. Thanks for showing up this morning. And Olivia, thanks for getting us all together. And yeah, hi, I'm Dede. I have a farm called Root Down Farm, and we're located in Pescadero, which is on the coast of California, about an hour south of San Francisco, maybe 30 miles north of Santa Cruz. We pasture raise chickens, ducks, turkeys, and pigs. Currently this year we're doing, we raise about 650 chickens a week, Freedom Ranger chickens. So we take a couple weeks off, but it equals roughly 31,000 a year, which when I say that out loud, feels like crazy. It's a lot of chickens.
That's a lot of chickens, Dede.
We eat a lot of chicken. We do about 5,000 Pekin ducks a year, and then this year we're going to do about 550 turkeys. And I think for hogs, we're going to harvest maybe around 150 this year. We sell, at this point, we started out selling primarily to farmers markets. We're in a location where there's a lot of people that live close by, being in the Bay Area. So we sell, now it's kind of shifted. It's about maybe 60% farmers market, 40% wholesale, retail, butcher shops, restaurants, things like that. I live here with my wife and our 2 little kiddos. We've got 2 full-time employees, and let's see, yeah, we just hit our 10-year anniversary. So there's all kinds of fun things that come with that. But yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. All right, Katie, what about you?
Okay, good morning, Katie Pencke, and what an intro. Dede grows all that poultry and how many pigs I grow every year, and that's all I do is the 150 pigs. So I'm really excited to learn from my colleague here about how to grow a meat business. Also 10 years in, located in Northwest Washington State, up by the Canadian border, 35 minutes outside Bellingham, and first generation family farm. My husband and I met while helping other people start small farm businesses at one of those incubator projects, as they like to call them. And I always kind of joke that we convinced ourselves it was possible because that was our job, was to like, you know, pump them up and be like, you can do it. Go talk to the FSA. They'll give you a loan. And we just convinced ourselves. So we set off for the wilds of Whatcom County. And I am a farm business training advocate. I am really passionate about it. I try to participate in trainings whenever I can. And I'm in one right now with the Niche Meat Producers Assistance Network. That's amazing. And I'm excited to learn more about Kiwara Coalition.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, Meagan, you can round us out.
Okay. Hey, you guys. Thanks for having Barney Creek Livestock with you this morning. We're based out of Livingston, Montana in the Paradise Valley, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. We are a cow-calf operation. We run around 100 to 120 head. We're grazing a little over 1,000 acres in the valley, and we, as much as we possibly can, we move those cows every day. We harvest and sell about 20 to 23 beef each year. Sometimes Malloy's lamb, she's our daughter. And how we got here, it's an interesting story. Pete and I both grew up ranching. I was in Western Montana growing up, and he was what I thought, you know, after the middle of the state just kind of dropped off into the unknown, but he was over here on the eastern part of Montana. We met and we kind of just started to feel like we were going to do this. And then his dad offered up to lease their place. And so that's where it really all started. And Pete's day job is a smoke jumper, if anybody knows what that is. And if you do know about wildland fire, it seems to interrupt haying season. So we had to figure out pretty fast how to not hay and also make money on raising beef. So we sell direct to consumer and to restaurants. It's a little about us.
Thanks, Meagan. Thanks to y'all. Yep. I feel quite honored to be the steward of this group of people. So I just wanted to thank all of you for spending your time with us today and your knowledge and your experience. It's kind of like a little dream team here. That said, we're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about like just successes. Our goal today is really to talk about what folks wish they had new when they started and what they can share with you about where they're at now in a real honest sense. But I thought we'd ease into that and start with land. It's everybody's biggest question, right? And it's everyone's maybe major impediment. And National Young Farmers Coalition tells us always in every survey that they do that it's everybody's biggest problem. So you each have pretty different ways that you came into your unique land situation. So can you just tell us briefly how you found capitalized and structured your land. So whether you lease it or whether you own it, whether there's an easement on it, and any of the key relationships that you made to make it happen. And those key relationships can be, anyone in your cosmos. So let's mix it up a little bit and we'll start with Katie.
Oh, great. I'm still unmuted. Good thing I didn't say anything inappropriate. Great intro. I want to start by acknowledging that Alluvial Farms is on the traditional territory of the Nooksack Indian tribe. And we are on a 45-acre parcel that was raw land when we found it. We looked for land for 3 years, and we actually started looking with another couple and parted ways with them peacefully when they found another parcel partway through our search. But the whole time we were looking, our partner was the Whatcom Land Trust. Every time we found a parcel, we made probably 3 or 4 offers, and every time we found a parcel, we would show the land trust, the program staff at the land trust, and we would evaluate what is the conservation easement potential on that parcel, or did it have any development rights that could be sold. And we knew that both of those processes would take multiple years. And so the land trust had a bridge loan product that they wanted to experiment with, and it was so hard to use. They hadn't found anyone who had been able to use it, because basically they would provide the cash up front that the easement sale would yield within a few years, or the development rights sale would yield within a few years, but they would see that potential, provide cash up front so you could actually make the purchase and then move forward. And so that was our one partner, was Whatcom Land Trust. And the other partner was the lender, which was the USDA Farm Service Agency. And this is a really wild, I remember when I started teaching people about it, I was like, how would you ever use that product? That is insane. And I'm happy to say we were able to figure out how to use it. You have to have a bill, like a signed bill of sale from the person selling the farm, without any pre-approval. The FSA doesn't do any loan pre-approval. You have to give them the bill of sale, and then they start a 3-month-long process to see if you'll be approved for land. And so it's really crazy. You also have to document that you've been rejected from 3 conventional banks for a loan, which we actually had been, because we was like, FSA is going to be really hard to work with. So we kept trying to find other loans, and our business plan was so out of the ordinary to grow pigs in Western Washington. We live in a county that grows potatoes and blueberries and raspberries. It's massive. There's dairying up here, massive agriculture. And so they kept being like, but this doesn't make any sense, your business plan. And plus we wanted to buy raw land, which you can't really get a loan for. So anyway, the FSA, they call themselves the Bank of Last Resort, and they lent us $300,000. We put in 100 of our own savings, and the land trust put in 100,000 for the conservation easement. Basically, they do an assessment, appraisal of the land before and after the easement sale. And they said we were going to lose value by putting 10 acres in a permanent easement. And so that came to us as a no interest forgivable loan. And then we were like, oh my God, now we're $500,000 in debt and we have nowhere to live. There's raw land. What are we doing next? There's pigs everywhere. So we built a yurt, moved in, lived there for 3 years. Now we live in a building. It's amazing. And I might leave it at that.
That's awesome, Katie. Super helpful. I'm dropping a note in the chat here about progressive changes at the FSA.
Okay. I guess I just want to share too, I've had a lot of fun visioning forward lately, and I'm visioning our succession out of this business in 10 years. And I want to sell the land to a land trust and the business to a family, so that the family doesn't have to buy the land and the business.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah, let's make sure that everybody knows that those 2 things are different. The business is different from the land. That's also different than your family. Shocker.
Okay.
Next up, Micha, let's go to you.
I'm losing my earbud. Hey, Stand by. Yeah, so when we first started farming, we landed on a leased property, and that was really just like cold calling, looking for internships, which it really wasn't at all that. But that was in, excuse me, in a floodplain in Western Washington, a little bit closer to where Katie is. And so we farmed there for a few years, but with our livestock, it was very stressful having to move them. There were floods every year, and we built and lived in a tiny house off grid. And then my husband and I started a family, and it was really difficult to have a baby at a house with no running water or toilet. So we started looking. We actually started looking before that, while I was pregnant. In similar process to Katie, it took a really long time. We did go through FSA. We found our land on a website that at the time was called FarmLink. Now it's called Farm to Farmer, but it's where land seekers and landowners can sort of find each other, kind of like a Craigslist type situation, that is supported through a land trust here. And I would say also that our realtor that we found was really helpful. So we found a realtor who knew about farming and ag land. And so he wound up being the realtor for both us and the seller. So I think he made out pretty good for that sale. But we did go through FSA. FSA has changed, like you say. I don't remember having to show that many rejections. This was back in 2017 for us. We did try to get a loan from an ag lender first. Well, we actually, so FSA used to only go up to 300,000. That's changed now. I think they go up to 5. And our land was 495. So we needed that gap loan mortgage, and we got denied by the traditional lenders because really we don't look very good on paper. We still don't. So we were really fortunate to be in a position where my husband his family had money, and his grandparents gave us a loan for that second mortgage. We also have a rental property on our farm, which is really nice, and that essentially covers that second mortgage. So we pay our FSA loan once a year, which is something you need to budget for. But our land is part of, same with Katie has a conservation easement on it, but it already had that when we purchased it. So the previous owners that were on this land went through that process while they lived here and owned the property. And that made it so that we could actually sort of afford it, because we're on 30 acres with 2 houses and really nice buildings. Without that conservation easement, this property value would be extremely high because this is just a highly developed area. And it's really nice because our farm, the 2 farms on either side and the farm across the street are all conserved. So there's about 300 acres in our valley that are all conserved, maybe 500. It's nice. But without that conservation easement, it wouldn't have been affordable at all for us.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate the props to the friends and family loan. That's always our first, we call it the low hanging fruit. You can give them a good interest rate too. Don't forget that. Dede, what about you? Oh no, Meagan, because Meagan went last time. So let's do Meagan. Sorry, false start, Dede.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so sometimes I'm just punching my phone to get it off mute. So, well, we own 4.25 acres in the Paradise Valley. I'm sure y'all have watched the show Yellowstone. Well, most of you probably, or not, as just a complete, attest to being defiant to not watch it. Yeah, so when we started doing this, I had mentioned earlier that Pete's parents had offered up a lease, and we pay for that lease. We get about 200 acres here with that lease. And then we've since acquired other leases in the valley. And so there are, again, back to the Yellowstone show, there are a lot of affluent people that move into the Paradise Valley. Sometimes these properties are their second, third, fourth, fifth home and property. Some of those properties are up to as minimal as 200 acres and up to, 1,000 or 3,000 acres. So they move here because of the beauty and the wildlife. So instead of being angry about that, I have a real bad habit of turning a challenge into an opportunity. So I said to myself, how can we work with the folks that are moving here, and how can we help them learn about agriculture and what we are doing, and inspire them to, support, again, agriculture. So that's really what we started doing. We really capitalized on, let's help you bring your ecosystem back. Some of these places haven't been grazed for 20 years. We are huge proponents of soil health and ecosystem health. So we bring them on as a team member, and they learn about what's happening on their land and the changes that land is going through with the benefit of our management and the cows. And so we graze for vegetarians. They love the cows, and so they love watching their land come back. So that's really what we've done in terms of getting more land. The other thing that we do is we've sort of followed the the goat and, well, mostly the goat folks in California, and have gotten really creative with those lease arrangements. And so around here in our context, it's about $32 to $34 per head, per day, I believe, to lease on, on someone's land. So we flipped that a little bit, and we have 100 to 120 landscapers basically that these folks pay for around their house. So we've taken something that they understand and that they know, and that we're like, the cows are basically, they're your landscaping service. And how can we get a little creative with those leases and not pay per head? Because that's a lot, you guys, it's a lot of money. I know, that's why you're all here on this call. And so we will pay for our infrastructure. When we move infrastructure on, we bring that, so we can take it with us if we break those leases or something happens. But we might pay for, if they have pivots, we pay for the power of that pivot, and that's our lease payment. And we might only be on their land for tops 30 days with those daily moves, and then we move them off. So, that's just one example of how we've just tried to get pretty creative with how we're paying. So we know that when we go to do a lease, we're including what we pay ourselves, because we run this grazing operation like a business. So we include that when we look at a lease, and we put all those factors in how we're going to structure that lease payment. And there's other stuff we'll get to later, but.
Super great. I love the positioning of it, Meagan, especially because it involves teaching folks while still providing a revenue stream, right? Okay, so right after land comes money, second only to land. Everyone wants to know how you find money. And
we still need to hear from Dede, I think, right?
Oh, shoot, Dede. Thank you, Micha. Oh, failure of the facilitator. Gosh, I got stuck in the pivot payments. Thank you, Micha.
Okay, it's okay.
Dede, take all the time you need. Tell us all about Peninsula Open Space Trust.
Meagan, real quick, I really like the sign that's hanging above your head. It's really hard to not focus on that when you're talking. Okay, so yeah, I lease 54 acres from a land trust, and so that started back in the end of 2013. We signed that lease, and prior to that, I had a couple friends, and we were gonna do the farming dream. We were gonna come together and start a farm and do everything. We're gonna have fruit trees and animals and vegetables and flowers and agritourism and everything. And so there were 4 of us, and at the time, this particular piece of land, the tenants who were here, they let their partnership split up, and so the land trust took it back on, and they sent out a request for proposals to the greater community, and then had a panel of local farmers that would review them. And so myself and these 3 other people came together with this like super stellar proposal with like, you know, a whole like photo montage about how we are going to do all these things. And they selected us, which was incredible. But then it kind of dwindled down. One person got offered a pretty sweet job. Another person got offered a pretty sweet job. And so it was myself and one other person that started the business. And he didn't make it through the first year. And then there was me. And so I kind of, I'm super grateful. I think everyone ended up being exactly where they needed to be. And I don't think I would have done it at that time in my life by myself. So I'm grateful for the push of having a partner at that time, and also really grateful that he moved on. So, the way we started our relationship with the land trust is called Peninsula Open Space Trust. They protect a lot of land in our area, and it's like their donor base shifted in the last maybe 10, 15 years to protect more farmland, keep farmland farming. Historically, they have done a lot of open space to keep open space from getting developed, but I think they're seeing the value of having people and stewards on the land. So this particular piece has been kind of a example of that. And as that sort of new mindset for them was starting, they were pretty open to how we would arrange it. We basically invented this pay system that would kind of ramp up as the business grew. You know, that first year, everything was new, the partnership, the business, the land, to us, everything was new. So they worked with us to have a super affordable land. We basically pay a land rent and then a house rent. And they kept those really low and have like incrementally increased over the years, which I think is a pretty unique situation. But you know, in the beginning, we're like, you can't offer this at market value and want it to be farmed. That's just not, it won't work. So it was pretty creative, and it's worked out really well. And now we're in the process of they want to sell it. They don't want to be landlords anymore. So we are doing what a lot of you spoke about. We're working with them to develop the conservation and ag easements to put on the land with the potential sale to us moving forward. So we're in the transition period of that. But yeah, I think especially, I mean, and there's a lot of parts of this country where land is really, really hard to come by, and this is definitely one of them. And the land trust option is I think maybe the only option in some areas. So I think it's a really important piece to think about.
Thanks, Dede. And I also just wanted to point out that we've got some really successful lease situations here. And I think it's notable to take a pause and question whether land ownership is really always the be all end all. Because I don't think it is as a human or as a business advisor. So that's also why I asked this question and why I asked this diversity of folks to tell their stories there. So thank you, Dede. Sorry about missing you first. I'm gonna put you back on the spot again. You can answer the next question first. That way. So let's talk a little bit about money. How do we capitalize these businesses, you know, either when we launch them or when we go through changes and pivots and take new directions? So this question is for Dede and Micha and Meagan. Talk to us a little bit about equity partnerships or debt relationships that you have and when they came into play. And I think a key piece of that, the financial piece, is also potentially what's the off-farm job hustle that supports you if you have one, One of my favorite things to talk about is to illuminate the off-farm job hustle and not just stick it in the corner like the bad child. Let's talk about it, whether it's a good thing for you and your family and your farm or not. So benefits and truthful challenges or questions about the choices that you made also in these financing relationships. So debt, equity, and off-farm job. Dede, you go start us up. I mean, I know you could talk about this for 4 years, but you have 3 minutes.
Great. 3 minutes. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, I started the farm, like I said, with that business partner, and we both came in with $10,000. So we started the farm with $20,000 that I had borrowed from some family, and I think he did the same. It's crazy to think of what we started with that first year. And obviously I talked about our lease situation. It was super affordable. But a couple years into it, we needed more money. And so, yeah, the first sort of help I got was through an FSA loan. There's been lots of talk about FSA. I got an operating loan. I think it was year 3 or 4. And honestly, as I look back over the 10 years, there's been some like pretty key turning points. And that was definitely one. I think I was, I don't know, I had this mentality growing up that debt was bad, and that, to get into it was like a terrible decision, especially from a business standpoint, let alone a personal. I had never had a credit card. I was like, no way, I'm never going in debt. And so applying for a loan was like a huge step for me. And obviously having a lot of help from people on the outside being like, no, it's not a terrible thing, and it can help really grow your business. So taking that plunge was a big step and made a huge difference. It like, I only needed 1 year of it, and it just launched me into a little bit more of a comfortable position. Since then, I've gotten equipment loans from FSA. Just last year, FarmLink, the organization, offers some 0% loans to, if you qualify for certain things. So I did that for a large equipment purchase we were doing. We were building out some shipping containers to be our chick brooders. And so there's now I'm way less scared to get loans. Maybe I went the other direction. But that's okay. It's getting us in a place where it's a little bit more sustainable for me. And so that's on the business side. On the family side, my wife does not work on the farm at all. I mean, she provides emotional support and obviously like steps in as I need. But she's a teacher in our local school here. So she basically we're so dependent on her income. At this point, the business is paying. I mean, it took many years for me to pay myself, and now it's paying me more, but certainly not what we live on, especially with 2 little kids. So we're completely dependent on that. And that setup works for us sometimes. I think for our partnership, it works really great to not work together. And also it works really well to have that off-farm income. And but it also means like I do a lot of the childcare and working. So it's right now feeling it's complicated. I mean, it's like we have this lifestyle that requires almost every hour of the day, and children do that as well. So it's an interesting point to be in this magical place with this toddler that I have, and also dropping balls left and right with the business. And honestly, having kids was that thing where like we used to do like so much stupid shit, and now we do like way less. It just kind of focuses you because time gets dropped. So anyway, like I said, I could talk for 4 years, but I'm gonna stop right there.
It was super helpful, Dede, to hear all of that. Thank you for presenting us the honest version. Meagan, debt, equity, smoke jumping. Go.
Well, that's it.
Oh, and family, in-laws,
Yeah, that
children, just all
Yeah.
that in 3 minutes.
3 minutes. So in terms of equity partnerships, we don't have any loans or anything like that. I think we just made a decision early on to just not go that route. I appreciate Dede's insight, though. I really like that. We're just primarily supported by off-farm jobs. I think our meat, our direct-to-consumer sales and our retail pays to ranch, but any extra, coming in, it's probably not, it's keeping the business going in a good way. I've definitely seen that grow. But we're not paying ourselves off that business quite yet. So we don't really have any debt relationships in terms of, again, like we're not running on an operating loan. Those off-farm jobs, Pete was a smoke jumper, as I mentioned when we first started. Then he now runs the Forest Service smoke jumper program out of Washington, D.C. Cool about COVID, he built an office in the barn. So he is here if something goes awry, which that's a bonus, getting those remote jobs so you can still kind of be here. We have 2 kids as well. They're 15 and 17. And you think, man, when they get older, it's got to get easier. It just gets different. So again, I appreciate Dede mentioning the time, because that's a huge, it just keeps going when you've got a family, that you just got to keep your eye on that ball. And then I work for my off-farm job. I work for Nicole Masters with Integrity Soils. So we travel a lot. Just got back from England. We've been to Australia and New Zealand. We've got trips planned to Kenya and Portugal next year. So that is such a lovely job, but it's definitely that balance and that off-farm hustle, because the organizing.
But you're okay with it. Like, you don't hate it. You're not
No,
trying to get rid of it.
Nope, I love it. I think it really keeps me humble, especially traveling all over the world. We, as farmers in the US, are not special. It is this story everywhere. And I think it's so, it'd be like, wow, I mean, our agricultural pool is not an ocean, it's a pool. And if we just keep pulling and keep pushing the food system, I am convinced it's going to get better. People like us, we are massive. We're not small. So
I love that, Meagan. Thanks for opening up our perspective a little bit beyond our little Zoom boxes and American vision. Micha?
Yeah, so echoing the sentiment of being debt averse, I think part of it is just like the student loan debt that my husband and I both grapple with. But so when we started, we didn't have any real savings. We didn't really have any equity. So we were lucky that the farm we landed on, our mentor, was buying things for us in the beginning, very generous. I have a sticky note on my computer right in front of me that says, "Pay Eric," because I'm still paying him back. He's been just leaning into those friends and family loans. We also did that the first couple years when we were getting low on funds. We would just do like a call out to our community and our customers who really wanted to support us. And they were short-term, low interest rate loans, and we had no problem fulfilling those. And then we also have done crowdfunding campaigns for different infrastructure needs that we had. So like to purchase our own poultry slaughter unit, we did partial crowdfunding and partial grant funding we've taken advantage of almost any and all grant opportunity that comes our way. I have spent a lot of time writing grants over the years. I also had a value added producer grant from USDA and some other local grants. And then, of course, talked about FSA loan to buy our farm. And then the EIDL that came out post-pandemic. So that was the Economic Impact Disaster Loan through the SBA, which is sort of like the first and only time SBA was offering funding to farmers, because normally they're like, no, that's USDA. And so that was a really big loan. That was a $200,000 loan, but it has a really low interest rate, and it felt to us like those kinds of opportunities really almost never come around. And so we took a leap. And with that loan was sort of the first year we both tried to be primarily on farm and to hire more staff. And it didn't quite pencil out. So over the years, my husband used to do off-farm concrete work, finishing, for our sort of like family income. But we had pretty low expenses living in an off-grid home before we had a kid. And then it kind of, and I always did little odd jobs like washing dishes, like whatever I could just to get a little extra money. And then I started doing some contracting part-time work, doing farm service support. So similar to Katie, where I'm just like always wanting to be teaching and educating and working with farmers. And I did that for a few years. And then this last summer, I got a full-time job doing that kind of work with the Washington State Department of Agriculture. And it's the first time I've worked off the farm full-time. I work from home primarily, although I do travel around the state quite a bit. And it's been really good for me in some ways. It's really good for our family in terms of stability, financial stability, health insurance, all those types of things that don't really come from farming. It's been a really good sort of mental shift for me to be focused on something besides my farm. It feels good. It's like a good growth for me, but just like everybody else, I'm dropping balls on the farm now because my husband does we have staff, like everyone does sort of like the day-to-day, but I still manage a lot of the back end, customer service, sales and marketing stuff. And so that's just not happening the same way that it used to. So trying to find that balance. We do have a lot of debt now, and that's just something that we work into our financial projections, and our VAPG is over now. And so I'm like, ooh, I really hope we can continue paying off all of our debts without that, because that was very handy to have that reimbursement. Yeah.
Thanks, Micha. I appreciate also candor about whether you question if you should have done it or not, and the ideal and playing the debt game is always got all the sides, right?
Yeah. I mean, I will say that was having that money was the first time we ever had like a significant cushion in our account. And it did enable us to grow in some ways that we wouldn't have without it.
Absolutely. And it made a lot of sense in the moment to take advantage of what was really the cheapest money anybody's ever seen. So, okay, well, let's shift out of money to people, which is more fun to talk about. Katie and Meagan, who are the most valuable relationships to you in your farming, ranching, meat, peddling, cosmos? Who's most crucial? I mean, it could be a vendor, a family member, a customer, a landlord. Let's talk about the relationships that support you. Katie, you can go first.
Okay, I'm gonna go with our butcher. And I guess second right up there would be we mixed and milled our own pig feed for a number of years, from half of which was barley that we grew here on the farm. And that was a beautiful story to tell, but that workload when we needed to build a building wasn't sustainable. We started working with a mill, Conway Feeds, who's just in the county south of us, and that's my second most important. And I'm thinking of it almost like line items in my chart of accounts, because there's a lot of dollars leaving my business going to their business. And our butcher is a really unique cooperative. They were the first mobile processing unit at USDA inspected in the nation, and they're going through a transition right now of their general manager. It's been fascinating to watch. I guess the other person I'm going to say myself, and we'll loop back to this at the end, where it took me a lot of years in business to realize that my brain was a key piece of equipment in our business. And if we were going to spend $60,000-$70,000 on like a new tractor and a skid steer, at least we could spend $2,500 on a farm mindset coaching program for me. And it's been really a great change, but it happened like 6 years in, and there was some tough times. Just entrepreneurship in general, everything is dependent on your family. So to answer the last question about money, we both worked off farm full time for like the first 3 or 4 years of starting the business, and Matt slowly transitioned to part-time for the farm, then full-time. Then I was part-time for the farm, then full-time. For 2 years now, we've both been full-time for the farm, but we use grants to make up the difference between, developing raw land is just very expensive. And so the pork enterprise hasn't been able to carry all that. And just recently we started paying ourselves regularly. Previous to that, we was dependent on family and friends and all this other stuff. And actually now, after 2 years, I'm going to be pivoting back to off-farm employment, because we have this 10-year vision where we want to, hit financial independence in 10 years. So I need to start saving aggressively, need to increase the cash flow over here. But I'm excited because now I have a vision for a youth employment program on farms in our community, and there's other people interested in that. So what I'm going to be doing, hopefully with the nonprofit and a number of other partners in our area, starting basically like a supported employment program, life coaching for teens in our community to help them, while they're doing farming while they're farming. Yep. Still working on my elevator speech for that one, but.
Love it. I had no idea. The awesome addition. And Katie, so far you're holding the cake with the best soundbite of "my brain is a key piece of equipment for our farm." That's
Yep.
going to show up in one of my presentations in the future, probably, just so
It's
you know.
really key. And I want to add my husband. That's another key. So, and that's like second. So if I have like my own permaculture, I'm the zero. And then, that relationship with your family member, everyone else has really spoken to it, even if they're not in business with you, but they're living with you and you're in business and it's a land-based business where you live. It can be really complex relationship, and it's really amazing. Matt and I are in business together, and people work really hard. It's really something to see what people do. So, I'm just really trying to like find ways to support both of us through this, because people work hard.
Thanks, Katie. Meagan?
Yeah, I love this question, because I think Nicole and I talk about it a lot. And again, like I said before, everywhere. So Pete and I are pretty big systems thinkers. And so our whole operation is a system. And so it's not just a few people, it really is everybody that's involved in, from pulling or from, getting those cows and calves healthy on the land, moving, all the way to where we take them in for harvest. So I think that when I think about key people, Pete, of course, is a key person. He's a key person because he really is just excellent with numbers, always has been. And so he really runs the numbers. Like I said, we always include an hourly wage in what we're doing. When we look at, like I said before, anything with a lease, all the way to when we take those animals in for harvest. And so I think running those numbers is critical. He is also, he's got his eye on where we're moving those animals. Adaptive grazing isn't rocket surgery, but it is definitely, you have to be paying attention to your management. And so generally starts with him. I would also say key, they're teenagers, so our kids are learning how to work, and they're critical to our business. They've got their own irrigation lines. They can drive now, which is excellent. So they help out in between all their activities and what they're doing. I'm going to add in our lessors. They're key to what we're doing. Without them, we wouldn't have land to graze. We wouldn't have, their circles of influence, and them teaching those folks that we don't have connections with to communicate what we're doing, again, for that bigger picture of ag. And our interns, we've had interns for the last, I think, 5 years, some from Quivira. We have an Australian here right now who is just top notch. And so I think that those interns being able to share what we're doing and how it's a little bit different, and you don't have to have land, per se, just getting really creative and how you're going to do that. So I think for us, people are just, it's just a whole nother ecosystem and how we're working that system.
Yeah, I love that. Bringing in the people that you're paying. I mean, you both did, right? And it's a good segue into the next question, which is about processing and marketing. I kind of squished them together. So Dede and Micha, where do you process your meat, and what are some meaningful elements to that relationship? I would argue that I agree with Katie. It's probably the most fundamental relationship you can have as a meat business operator. So how do you manage it? And tell us how your choices in terms of butchery and processing are connected to how you communicate to your customer. Micha, you can go ahead.
Yeah, it's complicated, right? We do a lot of different things, and it's shifted over the years. When we first started, we only utilized custom exempt processing for our pork, and we didn't have beef at the time. And then we did our own on-farm poultry processing with a very limited license. And that one was hard because we could only sell fresh off the farm whole within 48 hours. And so that was doing a lot of pre-orders. And so that was hard, but also it got us to start saving email addresses and doing a lot of marketing through email to get people so they can make a deposit. And there's a lot of education involved in explaining the different types of processing available. So of course, with custom, here in Washington State, that can have an on-farm slaughter, but then it goes to a butcher shop, and then the customer communicates directly to the butcher on the cuts. And that can be a pretty big learning experience for some folks. Our first butcher that we used up north they did a great job, and we had a great relationship with them, but they were not super stoked about the type of customer that we seem to attract. We have a high quality, expensive product. We live in the Seattle metro-ish area, and so we have sort of like an affluent customer base. They want to know about the ingredients. They want to, they're picky, and so a lot of these butchers are kind of old school, using the MSG, not really comfortable like having these types of conversations. And so I used to warn my customers, like, they will probably be a little bit rude when you call. I don't have to do that with my new butcher. They're a little bit friendlier, but still, like, I've had to massage some of those relationships where there's been things that have gone awry. My relationship to my customers is extremely important, but honestly, nothing is more important than the butchers. They can make or break us. And I have the type of relationship where I can sneak in without having to necessarily book months and months in advance, partly because of our small volume for pork, but also those relationships. USDA is a whole different story and has been challenging. We've had, just like everywhere probably in the country, we've had a lot of issues with our USDA. We've had the slaughter facility shutting down multiple times over the past couple of years. We've had a huge price increase. I just looked at my numbers for pork slaughter went up 80% in the past 2 years. And so having to explain to customers what that means, why our prices are going up, or why they can't buy bacon right now, they can only buy half a pig. That's a challenging conversation to have for some folks. It just takes patience. And then we do all of our own on-farm poultry processing. And that's been a really big, important marketing piece for us because that is like very in line with our ethics. Our animals, those chickens like and turkeys never leave the farm. We slaughter all of our poultry halal. So we have a huge contingent of Muslim customers that cannot find poultry, fresh poultry from a farm that suits their needs. And so that's been a big part of how we find our customer base and the story we tell about our farm and how we process our animals.
Super cogent answer, Micha. I appreciate the connectivity between the two, and your trajectory is really, I think, interesting for folks to learn from. Dede, let's talk about your 30 million chickens and where you process them. 30 million, right?
That was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we do, 4 different species of animals and they all get processed at different places. And we started out doing poultry on the farm as well, but as we grew, I just I don't want to do that anymore. And I think there's some things that other people are really good at doing, like bookkeeping and slaughtering animals. So currently now this year, our chickens go one place, our pigs go one place, our ducks go one place, and our turkeys go a different place. And so it ends up being a lot of driving, because some of them then go to get cut up as well, and then everything eventually comes back here. But in terms of like thinking about this from like a beginning standpoint, I think that figuring out who you're going to sell to and how you're going to sell to them and then go back from there, it might be a helpful way to think it through. But I'm going to just say it one more time, but your most important relationship is your slaughterhouse, is your butcher, and figuring out who those are, where they are, if they're close to you, if they exist, and if they even have space. I mean, I think that for me, I have relationships with all these now, but it takes so much time. I send holiday cards every year to say, hey, thank you. Also, this is what I look like because we don't actually ever see each other. This is how cute my family is. And thank you for supporting us. Just to like, I don't know, give them like a little visual when they're like, no, we're all full this week. And I'm like, please. But for the most part, I mean, for my pigs, we have to book before the animals are alive. I mean, we're going out like a whole year before I even have the piglets here. So, and obviously they let me alter numbers as they arrive, but it's planned way in advance because they're so booked. And now I have 10 years of working with them, that we both really value each other's this relationship so much, and I don't ever want to just screw them over. Like I don't want to mess up that relationship, because then at least for pork, especially, you know, they make the bacon, they make the sausage, they make the products that now our customers are really used to getting. And I think changing that would be hard. And also, to go back to the 3 million chickens, we did like a pretty slow ramp up, but now that we do them every week, it's almost a little less work in this weird way, because I collaborate with another farm down the road who does actually maybe 4 million chickens. And we hire a truck to take them. We hire a truck to bring them back. We collaborate on a delivery route in San Francisco. We're doing 2 different breeds of chickens, so we actually sell to some of the same places too. And that allows us to have fresh chicken every week, which opens up who and how we can sell. I realize that is not the trajectory for a lot of people, and there's a lot of reasons to not do that. But it does mean we're giving the slaughterhouse that business every week, so they know every week of the year we're there. And I think that, you know, they're a business too. And so having that relationship with the farmer who's going to show up and not bail that day is really important. So establishing those relationships and treating them really well is really, really helpful. So yeah, I would go back from the customer to the slaughter/butcher, and then figure out maybe what you're going to raise from there, based on your land and where you are.
Thank you for saying that, Dede. And our conversation is what gave rise to me asking this question, in the sort of the backwards route of people and processing and relationships. And the way that I like to encourage folks to think about their processor relationship is with an enormous amount of empathy, like radical empathy instead of vendor transaction, right? And you'll receive it back. I love the holiday card idea too, right? Thanks. Okay, so let's go back to numbers for a minute and think about numbers in terms of how we evaluate these businesses. I spend a lot of time encouraging people to consider starting a meat operation while teaching them a practical suite of skills to maintain them well. And usually what that looks like is record keeping, along with some good evaluation and decision making. And I'm usually talking about the financial and sales side of things. And so my question for you, Katie, is how did you fall in love with the financials? Katie self-proclaims that she loves the financials. She loves the numbers. And so tell us, like, how often do you hang out with your numbers? How do you do your evaluation and your analysis? And how'd you get to that point?
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna say that it was through a few farm business trainings that we were connected with a person named Poppy Davis, who teaches accounting and bookkeeping to farmers. And that was where we really up-leveled from maybe spreadsheets. I think we had dabbled in QuickBooks before then, but when we met Poppy, that was a big upgrade to QuickBooks Online. And I'm in the middle of a new learning curve where because of the current business accelerator that I'm part of, I have access to 4 hours of coaching and 3 hours of training with a new group called Kitchen Table Consultants. And this is like next level accounting, farm business accounting. And I'm really excited because I feel like I had reached sort of a plateau, a revenue plateau of last year was 260,000 gross, and the year before was 290 gross. So last year I went down, and I'm just like, I see myself as $1 million business owner, but I'm like, I think there's something in my systems, I need to, as we talked about this morning, it's like the numbers aren't your operation, you're operationalizing the numbers, but my vision of like growing the business and working less, I feel like the key to how that actually happens is inside the numbers. And yeah, I guess also just seeing how much entrepreneur, I worked for nonprofits for a long time. And so being the owner of a business that we're spending like more than we're earning, we're making up for this with grants. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable as well. And so that is why I'm just like, numbers. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to shut it down, but I need it to make sense. And ultimately now, in order to hopefully get it to the point where somebody would want to buy it as a business where, it works. And so I think the numbers are the center of it. That's the story. I just this morning was getting some coaching on my balance sheet and realizing that nobody had I thought my CPA was making updates in my balance sheet every time they did our taxes, and they weren't. And so I wanted my balance sheet year over year to be telling this story of like, here's how our equipment is changing, here's how it's depreciating. And I didn't know enough to know that they weren't updating it. So that story isn't there. So now I'm like, oh, do I forensically go back? And
Yeah.
so it's so humbling, and yeah, I guess it's the center of it all.
Thank you. And just real quick, like, are you looking at your financial statements and doing enterprise analysis like on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis?
Right now, I would say monthly is where we're at. We do a cash flow budget at the beginning of every year. And then monthly, I enter actuals and actual balance at day one. And then we kind of adjust our projection.
Okay.
And do a deeper dive every quarter.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Super helpful. Okay, we're going to shift again. We're going to go from numbers into the more personal aspect of things. So for all of you, this question's for all of you. In my entrepreneurial coaching, I always start with a visioning process when I have my druthers. And in our preparation for this discussion amongst the five of us, we ended up migrating very swiftly to a conversation about values and knowing one's values as a key starting point, and as a center point to the business, right there next to numbers for Katie, right? And actually the precursor to the numbers. And in our leadership workshop last month, for those of you that were attending this series, we started with values as well. And we have a core values exercise that we use, and you can get in touch with me for that if you want to revisit that. But I would like for each of you to go into that and talk a little bit about the driving forces behind your business and what motivates you. And then from that motivation, how do you make decisions in tune with or outside of that value system? How do they guide you in the day-to-day? Like, give us some examples of how they don't just live in this like big visioning world, and that they actually do something in your day-to-day. Who wants to attack that first? I'll let you guys self-select. I see Meagan laughing, but
Did you want to go, Meagan? Okay. So we have a tagline of ethically raised meat. And when we first started, it was like our ethical commitment to animal welfare. And over the years, we have expanded that definition. So we have threefold ethics. One is, of course, animal welfare, but also to the land and sustainable land management. And then finally, we've added people, the people that work on our farm, including ourselves. That one's the hardest one, ourselves. And I would say like we're not always the best at taking a step back and doing that big picture visioning as much as we should. But an example of where it really is coming into play is with our pigs. So I mentioned that we raised some pork. When we started out, we were doing all pork. Our first farm had a wood lot, and so with tons of blackberries, and that was a really great place to raise pigs. And our current farm is all pasture, and we raised them on pasture with like a spoke and hub system. And the pork was gorgeous and the animals were happy, but the land was not. We didn't have the capacity or the right equipment to follow behind them properly to you know, fix the land after they destroy it. Even if we moved them quickly, they create a lot of rutting. And so the last year, we moved them into a barn we're renting from our neighbors across the street, and we're deep bedding them. It's an open-sided barn. And a lot of people do that, and we feel okay about it. It is much better for our land. I feel less excited about it for the animals. Of course, again, it's still like a much better than typical commercial pork operation, but it's not quite hitting the mark. And so we're thinking about phasing out of pigs altogether. And it's an extremely difficult decision to make because we have a lot of really loyal pork customers. But we've also had challenges with breeding, and we're really small scale on the pork, and it's hard to pencil that out. So it's one that we're dragging our feet on, but it was my husband being I was really dragging my feet more than he was, but him being like, look, this is not good for our land, and being really firm on that. And then me thinking back like, okay, that is really an important part of our operation, and I need to pay attention to that.
It's awesome, Micha, just in terms of putting the two next to each other, right? Sometimes they have to go up against each other. And so creating priorities within those value systems is helpful for making those challenging decisions.
Oh, I have
Meagan,
another one. I don't know. Do I still have time?
let's give everybody a chance, and then maybe we can come back around, or write it in the chat, Micha, if you can do it concisely. Meagan, you want to go?
His phone.
It's so hard on the phone. I feel you. It's like, where is the button?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think early on, we could afford for Pete to go to ranching for profit. And then I was running different conferences and classes. One of them was with you, Olivia. But I think we really were able to drill down what our vision and our mission and why we were doing this. And it follows pretty closely, probably with everyone on this call, but it was soil, plant, and animal health and community health. And so we have stayed, wherever we've got the same values in all of those things. And so when we make a leasing decision with someone new that we're going to take a lease on with, if our values don't align, we do not feel bad for saying this isn't going to work. It's just, we're fine. It's not going to work. And then they try to come back the next year. And so we enter another conversation, and it's just, we feel strong, and we feel good about what we're doing and how we're, really fostering soil and plant and animal health off those values. I think in terms of community, we really watch our prices, and yes, we're grass finished beef, but we want our community, the folks that are under the assumption that they can't afford grass finished beef, they may not buy it every day, but if they buy it in bulk, we've got some families that really pay off their whole beef until the next harvest. That isn't a lot of families, but we believe in those families getting quality meat. And so we work with them. Have been working really hard on providing SNAP for families, trying to chip away at that concept, which it's an onion. If anyone out there's figured it out, send me an email. And then in working with Nicole, we run a coaching class, a training that's 36 weeks long. And we also take them through how they're going to run their coaching business. And so we work on something called an evolutionary purpose. And I think that sometimes if folks are having a hard time trying to figure out, exactly what their values are and maybe what those words are going to circle, an evolutionary purpose is really just what drives you, what makes your heart sing, and what gets you up in the morning. And it's very simple. And it really comes down to a tagline for your state of being and why you're doing what you're doing. And so sometimes if you're having a hard time finding the right words, just distill it down to that and start there. But those are, I would say, Barney Creek Livestock, that's kind of what we round out as.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Katie, I'm looking at you. Oh, Dede, you go. Dede, go. Come on. God, that's twice now.
Olivia.
Not Dede's day.
Okay. Values. It's I feel like I resonate a lot with what Micha was saying, that when I started this, it was like all about the animals and all about being, raising them as best as possible, and have since shifted to embrace those other two incredibly important pieces too, which is the land and how it's treated, and the humans and how they are treated, and to make it as sustainable for all of those things, because and I feel like the last couple of years it's been more focused even around the humans, because it gets sidelined for so long in the beginning, or for me it did, and so me personally as a whole, but also respecting my employees and paying them a living wage and making sure they get time off, and all of those pieces that really often get overlooked, and sometimes especially in agriculture, there's a focus on the one thing. So Micha, thank you for bringing that up. I think also in the beginning, you have a lot of time and not a lot of money. And later on, hopefully you have like a little bit more money and a lot less time. And so I feel like for me in the beginning, I just like overused myself. It was just like, I got this. I just feel physically really just was so focused and mentally so focused, going to make this thing work at all costs. And 10 years in, looking back and being like, wow, it would have been helpful to like really bake in some more sustainable practices to get to this place now. And so now, I just feel like for me too, starting a family and becoming a parent was like life-changing in so many ways. And the values that I started with have shifted so many times, like probably even during the year they shift. And especially in becoming a parent and figuring out what priorities there were. I think in the beginning I was super ideal and like, we're going to do all like super slow growing heritage breeds. We're going to like do all, all these things. And I feel like when my first kid was born, we're like, no, this thing's got to make money. Like if we're going to live here and we're going to raise these kids here and we're going to keep doing this, I can't just do what I think is really great. Like merge the things of like what I think is really great and also how we can make money and how we can build a business that's going to sustain us for a while so that my kids can keep growing up in this world. There.
That's awesome, Dede. I usually tell this little story when we're doing our leadership class, but I had a point in our business obviously started on like, you name it, whatever ideal you want to name in this sector, like we put it in there and we were like doing all of it. And we hit a point where within like the first 8 months, we needed to completely recapitalize almost at the level that we started with. And so we hadn't given ourselves enough operational runway, and we sort of looked at each other, and I was really fighting, making changes that were based on all of those values, right? And this is a restaurant business. And my partner looked at me and he's like, we can't be a sustainable restaurant if we're not open. That's not sustainable. Like if we're going to live these values, we still have to be physically open, or else they're not valuable because they're not on display. So we have to find some compromises, right? And so I think that that's absolutely part of living your value system, is finding which ones to demote from time to time so that other ones can take center stage, and so you can keep running your business, so you can be living something for you and others, right? Okay, Katie.
On the values front, oh, it's a really great panel. Thanks everybody for sharing your stories. And my value story has to do with where I feel like I sort of hit the wall in terms of I realized that personal growth is the limiting factor in my business. And so I started just researching personal growth, because I was like, oh, I've been focusing on the wrong thing. Let me focus on this. So Brene Brown has a really cool online exercise to come up with a shared set of core values within a business. And so I read that, and then on a car trip with my husband, I was like, let's do this. What are your words? What are my words? So we both came up with adventure, actually, which was really helpful. I just even just saying adventure, I feel better. And because we don't mean the adventure of running a business with your spouse, which is an adventure, or running a livestock business, running any kind of business, adventure. But we mean a different kind of adventure, which is like, outdoor adventure, rafting, exploring new corners of the earth, this type of thing. And then he came up with integrity, and I came up with equity. And so those are the 3 legs to the stool. There's definitely a lot more personal growth that has to come, after that, where how do you operationalize those values? But it actually has been like a year maybe since we had that core values conversation. And now we're getting deeper into writing our next 10-year plan. And it is interesting to me how having those 2 words out there and is actually helpful in terms of like, this is why I need to pivot to working with underserved youth in my community right now. It's because equity is a really hardcore value of mine, and it's not being addressed inside my current business model. And it's like, feels really good to be able to say that, because I think the entrepreneur in me was like, stay in your lane, make more money, increase revenue. And then I'm like, but actually no. And I want to work less because I want to adventure. And, with my son, I have a 14-year-old, and I think I've really appreciated the way the other farmers have talked about their family. And like, he's got 4 more years in high school, and that is a very limited time. That's really unique opportunity for me to have at least the awareness that like, this is going to happen really fast, and I need to hang out with him.
Thank you, Katie. You gave us the perfect segue into our last question, which was really centered around this conversation that you lit up in our brainstorming call. And I just want to go back to what Katie started with, and I'm actually going to share my screen too, because she sent us a cool image of what she was talking about while we were chatting. But Katie said in our conversation, the revelation of entrepreneurship is based on your personal growth. Personal growth is the foundation of your business growth. So that goes up against a lot of capitalistic ideals, a lot of things that you read in a lot of books about business how-to. And then on the other side of like personal, there's all this wellness talk these days. And over here is like wellness and sleep and rest and like, here's my Instagram ready self-help version of me. But the really challenging question that doesn't get answered on Instagram is like, how? Okay. So how do we hold self-preservation, family preservation, centered at the center while continuing to have viable business? And I think the spoiler for what we wanted to come here today with the message to all of you is that it has to be at the center. And these are farmers that are 10 years in. And we want to encourage you to hold it at the center now, not as the grand lesson that you teach yourself or learn after you've killed yourself. So we want to convince this audience to address that up front in their business planning. And I want each of you, if you'd like to, just give them a minute of your sense of how to do that and why to do that at the beginning instead of later. And I'm gonna just share Katie's mind map real quick. But who wants to give us a little something to chew on?
I'll go first if it's okay with everybody.
Go for it, Meagan. Thank you.
I feel so strong about this one because we go through this all the time. It's just like when I mentioned earlier about raising kids. It doesn't just go away. It just gets different. And what I'm referring to is overwhelm. And so also I've mentioned just traveling a lot and talking to farmers all over the world. And this is a number one thing. I mean, Nicole has had farmers in tears coming up to her about how do I manage overwhelm. And so what we talk a lot about is integrity. And I would venture to guess that on everybody's values list, they have listed integrity because of what we do and what we believe in and how we're trying to do the best we can for the food system. When you look at integrity and when you are out of integrity is really when overwhelm starts to kick in. And integrity, when you're out of integrity, it starts to stack up and stack up and stack up. And sometimes when you take a step back and you look at the pieces that you are out of integrity on, it's generally something you don't want to deal with right then. And then it just gets bigger. It becomes a gnarly little monster on your shoulder. So you have to do the hard thing and you have to check it off. And I know from personal experience, it's so much easier said than done, but you just got to deal with it. The last thing I'm going to mention is just in terms of self-care and all the things that you just mentioned, Olivia. We had one of our Create training students present last week in England, and she was working with a fascinating gentleman called Jamie's Farm. And Micha, you should Google him because it's a little bit about what you're talking about. He owns 6 farms in England, and he's doing a bit about what you're referring to, I believe. But he is so stretched with 6 farms and trying to manage what he's managing. So she asked him, she said, I think you should not ask yourself, have I worked hard enough to deserve a rest? But instead ask, have I rested enough to do my best work? And that is a game changer because I think we get in our heads, we've got to go meditate or take an hour off from all the things that we're managing. And it might just be 10 minutes just to really, look at the things. Am I out of integrity? Why am I overwhelmed? What are the early warning signs of that? And have I rested enough to do my best work? So that's what I've got.
So good, Meagan. That goes right next to the brain as the key piece of equipment. So good. Dede, Micha, do y'all want me to keep this picture up here? Should I just keep it up while we're talking? Yeah. We'll send it out tomorrow too.
Okay. I haven't found the balance. And so these
Mm.
conversations are hard because it's a struggle. And I think Dede mentioned this earlier. Dede, I feel like we're kind of the same person in a lot of ways. Same learning, same hard lessons learned. When I started, we were so frenetic and frantic, and everything that we did on our business was just like go, 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 go. And I was so desperate for sales. I would answer all the emails all the time, phone calls, like I just developed really bad habits. And so, yes, for all of you who are just starting, I think also we're in a different place in our culture where we have a lot more time to think about mental health and self-care, to use a really, overplayed word. That wasn't really as much of a conversation 10 years ago. And it's really hard to break those habits once they're embedded. My brain is actually wired to be like always doing something, and it is really hard to turn it off. And I feel guilt if I'm not being productive. And so don't do that if you can help it. I don't have the answer. There's lots of different, I've definitely hit burnout and I'm working through it. And, all of the things, exercise, therapy, meditation, those are all good. But sometimes when you're burnt out, those just feel like more work too. So I think I'm working on recognizing my own feelings and how I feel and trying to not dismiss it, and just making those little baby steps of being like, whoo, this is maybe not like the best moment to try to do a lot of work right now.
Micha, I really appreciate you being able to say what you don't know. And I really encourage all of you in your trajectory in farming and ranching and entrepreneurialism to get really comfortable with feeling out of control and feeling really confident inside of the unknowing. And I'm saying that as someone who has a really hard time with it myself too, and who spent 10 years undoing the sense of trying really actively to undo the definition of strength as productivity in myself, and learning how to be less productive and still think that I was doing okay and acknowledge myself as still maybe like a strong work ethic person, even though I was no longer working 80-hour weeks. Yeah, so thanks for being willing to take the leap, Micha, and remind us that it's good to say what you don't know and what feels still really hard. Dede or Katie, either one of you guys?
I'll jump in I'll jump in. Yeah, similar. Yeah, Micha, we're on a similar path. I'm happy we got connected. I think that I too don't have an answer to this. I think it's work, it's life work to figure out how to hold all of the things we're holding. And I similarly suffer from self-worth being very much equated to my productivity. And what Olivia was just saying, trying to shift that a little bit or broaden my view of what productivity is. Sometimes it's laying on the floor with my kid, and it's also really important work. So it's and I too have definitely hit some really extreme burnout, and figuring that out at 10 years in, that like, oh yeah, maybe like take some more time off, or prioritize you, so that, I mean, I think getting so close to like feeling like I was losing my mind really pushed me to do some slower things. And I would encourage anyone to just not get to that place. It seems so silly. I mean, similar to what everyone's saying, it's like we start out and we're just like go, go, go. And you're like, oh yeah, I've heard of self-care. It sounds great for somebody else. But really understanding that whatever it is, even if it's like, yeah, taking 10 minutes to just like walk around, or, you know, getting off your farm for a half hour. I don't know, whatever it is to you, it's knitting, it's like running, it's hold on to those things that help you feel grounded or like settled in yourself, because you're going to need to lean back on those. I mean, this obviously this line of work and this lifestyle and this is attractive to certain kinds of people. I mean, not people that are just gonna be laying around and doing nothing all day. So we all kind of are in this boat together and probably have a lot of similar mindsets, and like why we are good at what we do can also be detrimental to yourself. So I think figuring out whatever those things are and doing them from the beginning is gonna help you do it longer.
Thanks, Dede. And I appreciate everybody's, you know, vulnerability in this moment. And I think it's a precious thing. So Katie, you kind of kicked us off with this concept. Is there anything else you want to add before we move to Q&A?
I guess I'm gonna shout out Charlotte Smith. I've been working with her for the past year. She has a virtual marketing and mindset training program for farmers. She's based out of Oregon, and it's really fascinating. Her work is fascinating to me because I've also sort of like dabbled around the edges of learning about the life coaching industry. And here's a person who's applying life coaching to farming. And it sounds, I'm learning about so many other agencies that do this work. I think in the chat, I just learned about ranchmanagement.com, ranching for profit. Didn't never, you know, sounds like, and then this Integrity Soils Institute, it sounds like you're doing really similar works with your clients too. So there's a lot of potentially different resources out there, but it was this, what she's doing is just a combination of like mindset coaching and business coaching, because I took lots of business coaching and it just added to my overwhelm. I was like, of course, bro, if I could figure out how to have time to do all the things you just told me to do, it's not, you know, I'd do them. And so having the ability to integrate some modern neuroscience about the human brain with hard skills in marketing and entrepreneurship has been, for me, it feels like the game changer. I'm got my fingers crossed that positive trajectory is going to continue.
Thanks for the tactical resources, Katie, too. And Meagan, you want to tell us just about one more? And I'll drop the link in the chat.
Yeah. So Integrity Soils, we just released it last week. integritysoils.com, under events. It's called Shift. Shifting how influencers, oh my gosh, Nicole's gonna kill me. Forge transformation, I think. Anyway, I always forget the acronym.
Skills and tools to equip leaders and change initiatives.
Yes. So it is all about behavior change. We talk a lot about parasympathetic nervous system. You do a mapping exercise that you discover what your early warning signs are before you get into a freeze or flight state. So I think that if you're working with farmers, or if just for yourself, or if you're interested in this topic at all, it's a great training. It was funded by a Western SARE grant, and so we really want a lot of folks that are working with farmers and ranchers, but if you're one yourself, it's going to be a good training, and it's online. So you can go at your own pace. It comes with a workbook and some videos. So it's interactive, but again, at your own pace. So it's a good one. And we're hoping to get enough people signed on to the first one that we put you in networking groups. So you're able to work through some of the exercises with somebody else, and then also be able to collaborate with peers. So.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Okay. That was a lot, and you all really stuck with us here. So I'm gonna turn it over to you all as participants, and we would love to have your thoughts and questions. I think as of now, we don't have any lingering in the chat, right, Taylor? We answered the raw land question. And I would love for you to turn on your video if you feel comfortable. You can raise your hand physically. You can just take yourself off of mute and start talking. And while you think about what you want to ask these folks about, I'm going to drop everyone's contact information in the chat so that you have a way to get in touch with us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Dominic.
Hey, so I have a question real quick for all 5 of you guys, the speakers today. You guys talk about the FCA and talking about grants and stuff. Did you guys ever indulge in like a business plan and like kind of presenting in front of investors? Or is it a small like I know at Durango, they have like a group called Scape where like you write a business plan and you kind of like present in front of them and they'll like they'll pretty much set you up with different investors around the area. So did you guys indulge in that when starting up your business or operation?
I would say I like definitely have a business plan. That's really important. I personally haven't done something like that. I think it depends on the group that you're approaching, what their values are. I think a farm or ranch business has so little return on investment that it's sometimes hard for me to imagine pitching it to that kind of investor unless they really are focused on developing food businesses and they're not looking for a big return and they just want to support businesses, sort of like the angel investment community. I think that you want to make sure you're pitching it to the right crowd, unless you have like a really profitable business model in mind. But if you're in this call, likely that's not necessarily the case.
I'd probably agree with a lot of that. I think it's a great idea. And I would really go to values and making sure that your values align. Because you can get yourself into a pretty quick drive down somewhere you didn't want to go because you were like, but they're going to invest. So that internal battle. But hey, if you do that, let me know, because I would love to be a part of that and watch that. I think that's a great idea.
Agreed. I was gonna say what I love about that idea is that you're looking at the farming enterprise as a business right off the bat and putting yourself in the context with other business owners. And I think anytime you put yourself out there, you're gonna learn so much. And the networking that you do and the putting together a plan like that is gonna be incredibly valuable. So I think it's a really good idea. And I in our early stages, we had to do something similar kind of to get the loans from the Farm Service Agency, but it was more numbers based and less like a pitch deck. But as that skill of being able to do that, to tell that story, here's my story, here's what I need, that's always going to serve you. Like now I am trying to learn about pitch decks because I still need like $150,000 to finish the power that I need to go all over the farm. and I don't want to take out any more loans. So I'm thinking about some kind of client investment or crowdfunding, so it's a skill that you're always going to need. So just getting right into it is going to serve you, I'm guessing.
And just to kind of expand on that, I think we're talking about a few different things here, Dominic, right? We're talking about writing a business plan, which has lots of different uses and lots of different formats for different readers, right? It can be long and inclusive, and that's really the most valuable user is you. It can be short and concise for somebody like a lender. And in terms of investors, I totally agree with Meagan and Katie in the sense that presenting yourself and your idea is always going to service you. The better you get at that, the stronger you will feel in yourself. So it's a wonderful skill to develop, and you will for sure use it. In terms of investment, we can have our friends and families invest in us and take on equity, right? And you can do your pitch to them. They should be convinced, right? And when you do crowdfunding, there's a certain amount of pitching that happens, right? When you create a campaign around it. But if what you're thinking about is the venture capitalist investment world, what we're talking about is understanding expectations. The expectations of that community is usually like a 10-fold return on their investment, right? And we're looking at farm businesses that if they're doing pretty well, we've got like a 1 to 4% return, right? Every year. That's like, cool. Okay, good. That investment community is looking for a lot higher return, usually. But then there's social impact investing, which are different kinds of investors that are values aligned, which is what Meagan's talking about, right? And they're not looking for the 10x. They're not looking for you to grow 10 times where you came from in these 10 years and kill yourself and then be sitting on this call saying, I don't know what to do anymore. And they've gotten no money either, by the way. So there are different kinds of investors out there, and they're more, and the community is growing. And so that is a line of research to do, but the questions to ask are about expectations from the outset, right? And then Cole dropped in one of an example of a space where it was actually born out of the slow money investing community that created an opportunity for folks to pitch their food and farm businesses in a space that's actually collectively and communally, I think, supportive, but also in front of investors, and then get feedback about it. So just wanted to kind of like separate all these ideas out to make sure that they get treated individually. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, last summer I did a internship with this rancher. She does her ranch is called Weasel Skin Ranch. It's like located like kind of a couple miles out from Durango. But she had me pretty much write a business plan, present in front of multiple investors and such. And this is why I kind of thought of the idea of like how to like, because her plan was like, it was a lot. I'm not going to explain it, but yeah, we got a lot of notes throughout the summer, and it was kind of hard and kind of like opened my eyes and like the whole how to operate a whole enterprise and stuff like that. So I was kind of wanting I wanted your opinions about that. So
Awesome. Great question.
yeah, thanks.
Carrie, go ahead.
Carrie, you're up.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for all of your reflections and sharing. It's been really useful. And my question is about a little bit about context. I'm in ranching, but I married into a family that's been doing it for 150 years. And so setting up sort of core values and sort of wanting to innovate in new ways is quite a challenge, because there is this, and Meagan, maybe you would know this more, but it's like, I don't even know the words for it quite. It's so thick. It's like, it's in the air, it's in the soil, it's in the water, like, this is how we've always done it. And so I don't know if any of you could speak to sort of strategy or some kind of guidance on like how you navigate that kind of deep family system as you want to innovate and grow.
Yeah. Yep. We live that daily. Pete's parents' property has been in the family for 127 years, maybe almost 130 now. So I get that. And we have a lot of friends that are in that same situation. And a woman that I work with specifically, we have our own online meat sales platform called the Meetup. She also works on the family dairy and the family beef business that supports 5 families. And so for her, Pete and I are in a little bit different situation. His dad was just literally ready to just lease it to somebody. So we jumped on that. So a little bit different there, but this friend of mine in particular, in dealing with that situation, it is, oh my gosh, it is so hard. And so she has come up with a couple just different enterprises on her own that are solely hers, that they have agreed to let her do that. And so she started her own little beef program that we sell on. And then also the other thing that she started was her own feed store. It's a woman-owned feed store, which is pretty cool. But I think just being able to find your own enterprise, gosh, I don't know if you're going to be able to break away from that. The other thing that I would recommend that, Nicole and I always talk about, carving off a little piece, like just grazing, 20 acres so they can see it. But if I also get that they might not be into that either. So I think somehow finding something that it's your own enterprise, that's the best advice. I don't know if someone else has got something, but I feel for you. I get it. You have my email. If you want, I got you.
Thank you.
I do want to add something, Carrie, because I do have that situation as well with my husband's family and 5 siblings taking over as 3rd generation of their family farm. And I want to be the voice now, which is like, yeah, lots of things that didn't work. My husband tried to bring in a joint visioning session so that they could all sit down and try and decide on core values together, right? For the first time as the 3rd generation. Didn't stick, didn't work. Everybody didn't really understand the methodology. And I really love the way you described it. It's like in the air, in the soil, in every single fiber of every forgotten tractor attachment on every berm. And I think there's a couple of tools. One is what Meagan already said, trying to figure out where you belong and being strong enough to maybe what I would call create boundaries. And that doesn't have to be a rejection of anybody else's activities or approach. But where are your boundaries? What is too far for you personally? And then finding a graceful way to communicate that, right? Attempting, putting yourself on the line to say, can we all potentially experiment with different modes for strategizing, finding a vision together, whether that's going to be through, holistic context creation or drawing on the wall or everybody sit and journal for a minute. And all of that's going to be rejected. Like, hey, sure, you try, at least you tried. Right. And not getting discouraged about your own, just feeling confident in having your own identity within that sort of pervasive fog of family land, and knowing that we all can have a relationship to land, whether we own and operate that land or not. And remembering to reject what I think has been sort of placed on us as those models as the only way to interact positively as a human or an entrepreneur or a successful person by owning land and running a business. It just sometimes doesn't look like that. And that doesn't mean you don't have a relationship with that place and that work.
Thanks.
Well, I might yeah, just kind of wrap up here. We're a little over 11:30. Unless Olivia, you wanted to cover anything else? I know
No, this
such a
is
good
great. Our
conversation.
email is in the chat and Taylor's going to follow up, right?
Yes, yes, I will have lots of good materials for you, and in the follow-up email. Yes, please get in touch if you need anything. These people are such a wealth of resources, and yeah, you're not doing it alone. So
And just so you guys know, there is a resources document that we created. So look at the attachments when Taylor sends your email, and please fill out their survey too, so we know what you think.
yeah, well,
And
thanks so much
huge
for joining
thanks.
us. Yes, yes, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Great to see everyone.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Really appreciate everybody being here.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.